to the Potter Discussion. This is episode 85. I'm your host, Oscar, and on today's episode, we will be going through the ultimate test of knowledge, all about spells. Let's do this. Welcome to episode 85 of the Potter Discussion. This is a QuizMaster episode. We haven't done a QuizMaster in I don't know how long, but I am glad to be back. These are a lot of fun. Before we get started, I will remind you that the links are in the show notes below if you have any topics, questions, QuizMaster questions, or questions in general for me. Go use those two links in the description below. You have a voice submission option and a Google form, whichever one works for you. Also, things at the Potter Discussion Instagram are picking up, so if you want some cool memes, little quizzes, hints for upcoming episodes, go check that out at the Potter Discussion. That's what you should search. So, QuizMaster, we are getting into this episode. I have lined up about 20 questions that we will try to answer, all about spells. So, this is going to be a hard one. I'm gonna warn you right now. Spells are difficult. As all of us know, it's hard to just think of a random spell. Like, if I told you to, levitate, I don't know if anyone could really do that. It's a really hard thing to, get down and think of the correct incantation almost like in time or even at all. But today we're going to be trying our luck and seeing how well we know the Harry Potter spells in and out, through and through. Let's just get into it. So, question number 1, what is Harry's most used / favorite spell? Starting off easy, let's just get this one out of the way. This was almost his first spell cast. Actually, maybe it was his first one. I don't know. He didn't cast it, and he didn't cast one spell throughout the entire first movie or book, or maybe just first movie. But it might have been the first one he cast in the second, and it was. So, I don't know if you can get this one. It's just think about it. It is not hard at all. This is not a trick question, but the answer is Expelliarmus. That's his go-to. That's what he fights Voldemort with. That's how he defeats Voldemort in the end. That just goes to show how the simple spells are usually the ones that prevail and the ones that usually do the best. But that was, I hate to say it, but that was kind of a warm-up round, and we're going right into the hard ones. Okay, question number 2. Periculum produces what? Periculum, that incantation. What does Periculum do? Okay, this is tricky. This is one of those spells that is cast only once, but it just feels like it sticks in my brain. This is what Periculum just sticks in my brain. For some reason, it is Periculum. That is what is in my head. So if you can already get Periculum just like in a second, good job. That means you probably read the books a ton, have watched the movies a bunch, and recognize spells upon first see with your ears, as Michael Scott says. So, yeah, if you can get this, good job, but I'll give you a hint. Harry uses Periculum in the Triwizard Tournament when Fleur is being kind of eaten by the maze. The roots are pulling her under. So he points his one upward, says, Periculum. What happens? Well, if you can recall, Periculum produces red sparks, and I gotta say, I'm gonna go on a quick tangent here, because the sparks produced by Periculum, it just feels so small. The red sparks, by the way, if you got that right, good job. It's a hard spell to get, but there's like nothing there. Harry says Periculum, and the music swells, and then like 3 sparks come out of the spell. And I was so disappointed because I was expecting like a firework, a light show of just red, or like red sparks, red something, but it was just, boo, and that was it. And of course, the teachers the professors did see the red sparks, so they rescued Fleur. But still, it was like there was nothing there, and I was so disappointed. This is like the smallest thing, and there's absolutely no need for me to be complaining about this, but I am going to. I'm going to stick by my complaining. So, yeah. So little sparks by Periculum. I don't know, maybe that's how it's supposed to be, because it's supposed to be, not messy. Maybe it's like you're helping someone, so you don't want to, damage them further. But, all right, let's just go on to question number 3. And I gotta warn you, this is hard stuff. What 3 protection spells were used to form the bubble around Hogwarts in the Battle of Hogwarts in the 7th book? This is difficult. If you can remember, I'll set the scene. So, the Death Eaters and the Snatcher army have arrived. Voldemort is on the cliff watching the castle from afar. The professors go out, point their wands to the sky, and say 3 incantations over and over again. And these white, almost Patronus-like balls of light fly up and form this bubble of protection around the castle. What 3 incantations did they say? That's the question here. And I really like this scene because it feels so almost, it's like so big. It's just such a huge thing that I feel like it can't go ignored. So when they're casting these spells, it's like a sense of finality that you really can't get anywhere else, because Voldemort is on the cliff watching over. There are almost hundreds of Death Eaters and probably thousands of Snatchers just watching. And when Voldemort says, "They never learn," you go, oh no. The Death Eaters raise their wands and they all just shoot like 1,000, things that damage it. And I don't know what the point of putting up the bubble was in the first place, because it does almost nothing. It kills maybe, what was it, like 3 Snatchers when Neville was taunting them? So, maybe it killed more, who knows? It probably killed a couple of giants, they didn't really think about what they're doing. Like, Hagrid is, like, the nice giant. I feel like he's the BFG, the big friendly giant, but I don't know. Drop did not seem like those giants that were in the 7th book. I feel like maybe the directors wanted the giants to be more, mean and, like, looks like more evil, I guess what they wanted to be. But I never thought of the giants as evil. I saw them as big people. So that's it. But the answer to the question is Protego Maxima, Fianto Duri, and Repello Iminicum. I don't know why I know this, but I do. So if you got that right, congrats. I would still consider if you got at least one of them, good job. You're pretty much almost right. I think if you got one of them, you're right, because it's a really hard thing to remember. So congratulations to all of you who got that right. Let's just move on to this question, because I feel like the 3 spells to remember, not really said that much, is pretty difficult. But question number 4. What incantation stops all hexes, jinxes, and charms in the area? Okay, another difficult one. This is a tough one because Snape uses it one singular time. One with an O, one singular time. And, okay, this is a little tricky. So, it happens in the dueling club. Harry and Malfoy are going at it. Malfoy starts on 2 casts. I don't know, what was it, a tickling charm? Oh no, a dancing charm. Malfoy casts a dancing charm on Harry, and then Harry casts a tickling hex on Malfoy, and they have a whole thing. But then Snape comes up and he goes, "Well, no, you shouldn't be doing this," and he does his thing. He says the incantation, and then everything stops. So what did he say? This is a pretty tricky one, and I think if you haven't gotten it already, it might be difficult for you. So the answer is Finite Incantatum. That's what Snape says to stop all of the magical things happening in the area. He gets rid of the snake, Harry stops dancing, Malfoy stops getting tickled. All of it kind of, just stops. All the magic in the area kind of ceases. So that is the answer for number 4. So, number 5. How many stupefying spells have to be used at once to subdue a dragon? Okay, this is a difficult one. So, in the 4th book, Charlie and his wizard friends are battling the dragons in the woods, trying to get them to calm down. He said that he felt it was better to open them in the dark while they were, still sleeping, but nah, not at all. And a very specific amount of wizards cast stupefying spells, and the dragon goes down. So, how many stupefying spells was it? Well, it's kind of a hard question because it wasn't explicitly stated, but in the movie you can see the correct amount of wizards standing around the dragon casting stupefying spells, and it does kind of mention it in the book. It doesn't say this many wizards. It says, Charlie and his blank amount of friends were trying to summon the dragon. So it isn't direct, but if you can get a sense, I think it'll be okay. So the answer is 5. 5 wizards casting stupefying spells at once have to pierce the dragon's hide and stupefy them, because of course the dragon's hide is really thick, so they have to really cast a lot of spells at once in order to subdue it. Moving right along into question number 6. How do you put out Lumos? So this is another one that it seems very obvious. It's like off the top of your head, a Lumos is such a simple spell. It should be very easy to put it out. But nope. We get the incantation maybe once in the 3rd book. Well, maybe a couple times, but I clearly remember in the 3rd book when Harry and Hermione are in the Shrieking Shack, they are listening at the door to Ron and Sirius, who are in the bedroom, and Harry says, incantation. I was about to say it and spoil it, but I caught myself. So he says the incantation to put out Lumos, and he puts it out. So what did he say? What did he say that one little time? It's Nox. Which is spelled in a very strange way. K-N-O-X, I believe. Maybe there's 2 X's, but K-N-O-X, Nox. That's what the incantation is. Which is it seems so simple. Like, Lumos is such a simple spell, so to put it out must be so simple too. But that isn't the case, and I think that's a really cool part, that the back end of, stopping spells seems to be a very vital part of, the actual spell casting process, because you could cast a spell, but you have to be able to undo it in order to be, feel safe casting that spell. But let's move right along to question number 7. How do you bring statues to life? This is a fun one. Professor McGonagall does this in the 7th book, and the moment is very memorable, but the incantation, unfortunately, might not be as memorable as the moment. So, this is there's not even a question. This is everyone's favorite Professor McGonagall moment. She says the incantation, all the statues come to life, they jump down from their pedestals and march out the door, and then she goes, the castle's under attack, do your duty and protect the school. And then to Molly, who's standing next to her, McGonagall goes, I've always wanted to do that spell, and that is by far everyone's favorite Professor McGonagall moment. It isn't even a competition. I already know. That is everyone's favorite Professor McGonagall moment, and you can't convince me otherwise. I already know what you're thinking. So if you haven't figured it out already, the answer is Pier Totem Locomotor, and that is a spell to bring, all these statues to life. And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing these wrong. It's very, very interesting, these spell names. So I might not be able to get all of them, but I'm trying my best here. So you can get the gist of what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that is question number 7. So let's just bring on to question number 8. What language did Rowling base the spells on? Okay. So this is probably one of the hardest ones yet, because we don't get a statement in the books, of course, because it's, the author speaking, so we don't know what language these spells are based off of. But what I mean by, based off of is, what did J.K. Rowling use to make the spells? And she used misspelled words from this language. And if you have a basic understanding of, language in general, I think the answer should be pretty obvious. But if you don't, the answer is Latin. J.K. Rowling used misspelled Latin words to make her spells, and it's very obvious. Expelliarmus is, disarm, and it's misspelled. So it's just things that she, took it literally. So she translated English, disarm, or, dance, or cause pain, made that into a Latin word, then misspelled it. Very, very literal. So if you have a good understanding of Latin, then it's, pretty almost, it's almost funny. Of course, I don't, but it's pretty funny to see how obvious it is. I mean, even I can tell. It's, definitely not just the spells. So that is a very interesting part of the story, and I think it's a very fun and exciting way to make spells. And I know making up, vocabulary words, kind of how we see them, vocabulary words. But making those vocabulary words almost seems like something that should be dull and not exciting and not, all these things just like, woo, this is fun. But it should be something that's like, this is, writing word one down, starting from a different letter of the alphabet every time, writing the spell. But no, making these spells from something like Latin, where you pretty much have a cheat sheet and you just move some letters around, that's something that I feel like J.K. Rowling did really well. Because it makes a lot of sense. The spells isn't just gobbledygook. It is real words that are just in a magical form. That's kind of how I see it. It's a real word just in a magical form. That's kind of how they write it. It's like using a different font for the same book. It's the same messages across. It's just using a different way to communicate. So that's kind of how I see these spells, and I think it really comes across. She does a great job with these, and I think that is that. Moving right along, we are going into the 5th book now, into Dumbledore's Army. So, there were many members of Dumbledore's Army, but among the most, determined, excited, and person who wants to learn the most is Ginny. You might have thought of Neville, you might have thought someone else, but Ginny was really eager to be in Dumbledore's Army because she was in the 4th year, I believe, at Hogwarts. With Umbridge there, the 4th year ain't going to be too good. So she was very excited to join Dumbledore's Army. And she made very good progress on one spell in particular. So, what was that spell? What was Ginny's specialty in the 5th year? That is the 9th question. What did Ginny's specialty spell do? What was it? What was the incantation? So you can probably think of it. So imagine they are, the Ministry of Magic. So they are running down the long corridor. They're near the end of the Prophecy Room battle. Then she points her wand down the hall, says, incantation! And then the spell goes all the way back and explodes, causing that, the shelf collapses, all the prophecies falling off. And that's what caused it. So, it is not an explosion spell, I'll give you that. But she is just so good at this spell that it might as well be. But the answer is Reducto. Ginny is extremely skilled at the Reducto incantation. That's just her specialty. She happens to be very skilled at that particular spell. But Reducto, I think, is very useful because it's a releasing spell. It can make some really big damage. Harry uses it in the Triwizard Tournament when Cedric is being, taken by the roots, and that really dramatic. He points his wand, and then the camera goes all the way down, and then he goes Reducto, and then it's too dramatic. But the spell is so small. I don't know why they put so much, musical effort into making these moments so big, but then nothing happens. It's just like a small little boop, and then the roots are gone. That was it. But that's Reducto, Ginny's specialty spell, and she was very good at it. She definitely saved them from a lot of pretty dire situations. Moving on to number 10. How do you freeze the Whomping Willow? So there are multiple ways to freeze the Whomping Willow. You can use a spell, or you can go up and touch the knot at the base. So, of course, as this is a spell trivia, we are not going to be talking about the knot at the base, but a freezing spell by itself. What freezing spell can you use to freeze the Whomping Willow? And it's not Freezio, it's not Stopio, it's something. It is something. So, if you can just think about it in your noggin, just try to, because this is a pretty obvious, I would say. So, think of different words for, stop or freeze, and then kind of try to make that into a spell form. But I'll give you a hint where this spell is also used. In the second book, when the blue Cornish pixies are released from the cage, Lockhart runs away, the students run away, and then Harry, Ron, and Hermione are left to, as Lockhart says, nip the rest of them back into their cages, which is such a small task. So Hermione uses a spell, and that is the spell that freezes the Whomping Willow. The spell is Immobilus. Immobile, that's freeze, stop, whatever. So, immobile is the root, Immobilus is the spell. I feel like an English teacher now, but that is what it does. So, Immobilus is the spell to freeze Whomping Willow, but you can also just touch the knot at the root. The base, rather, with a long stick, or fare your way, try to battle the branches to get to the actual knot. But yeah, let's just move on to question number 11. What color sparks are used to produce the Stupefy spell? So you cast Stupefy. What comes out? And it is described, but I feel like it was very fleeting. This description was very fleeting, so it's tough to kind of envision what it would be like to, see a Stupefy spell. But it is described in the books. It is not, however, in the movie. The color is not in the movie, but it is in the books. So I will be going off the books for this one, because in the spell, in the movie, it is just, a bright flash of white light that travels across and hits you. So, yeah, that's what happens. But what is the actual color? So, in the book, the color is described to be, drumroll please, red. Just like Periculum, it produces red sparks with a jet of red light, and boom, hit your opponent, and they are stupefied. I don't know why that was so complicated for me, but stupefied. So, jet of red light and red sparks come out of your wand when you cast the spell Stupefy, used by Harry upon multiple occasions, including the, airborne fight in the 7th book, the, fight in the Order of the Phoenix, the 3rd book a lot, the 6th book, used it a lot with the Inferi, so there's a lot of stuff going along with the Stupefy spell. Very useful. I would say his second most used spell, because that's what gave him away in the airborne fight in the 7th book. He, instead of killing, he said stupefy, and everyone knew that's kind of how it went. And I think he also disarmed someone, so they pretty much always knew. And I think, in the movies they changed it. Hedwig was killed, and he was like, no. That was the worst scene. I hated it, but let's move on. Let's not think of Hedwig dying. Okay, question number 12. How do you produce water? How do you produce water? Okay, this is a tough one. I don't think we have, an explicit stating almost ever. So, let's think back. I think, we do. We do. Okay, in the 6th book, when Dumbledore drank the potion and he's so thirsty, Harry says the water summoning spell, points it into the cup, but the water just disappears. No idea why he just didn't, shoot it right into Dumbledore's mouth, but instead he triggered an Inferi invasion. Dumbledore died, and the Voldemort forces of evil came to life. But if only Harry had done the spell right into Dumbledore's mouth. There we go. Gotta think logically here, but I suppose Harry, he didn't. He just didn't. There's no excuse, Harry, that you just didn't. So, yeah, let's just get right down to it. So, the answer to this question is Aguamenti. Aguamenti is the spell to summon water, and it is used upon multiple occasions, like Stupefy, but it is, I think, most prominently used in the 6th book, of course, when Harry is giving Dumbledore water, but then he takes it from the lake and the Inferi invade, so again, not the smartest decision, but I think it was, it had to be made because Dumbledore was thirsty. He couldn't have waited until he needed water, at the castle or something, but I suppose he wasn't really thinking rationally, when he asked for that. But let's just, let's move on. right along once again, and we're talking about the third book here. What spell did Dumbledore use to slow Harry's fall in the third book's Quidditch match? So, when Harry was falling off of his broom because of the Dementors, Dumbledore stands up, dramatically points at Harry, and says, and Harry's slow Harry's slow is fall, but Harry's fall is slowed, and he hits the mud with a boom instead of a so I'm a Foley artist now. But so Dumbledore says an incantation, and I believe it is also used in the 7th book when Hermione casts that spell to slow their fall in the Gringotts when they go through the the waterfall of revealing. I'm sure there's a cool name for that, but I'm not going to think of it right now. And Hermione also used that spell, and they fall to the ground, and they get stopped right before they stop. But it's kind of a, if you already know the answer, let's just laugh together here. Wow, I'm so weird. So, because it's funny because it is such a literal spell. It is something that you would say if you were, making a joke of saying literal things. But the answer is arresto momentum. I'm gonna arrest the momentum here, and it's so spelled arresto, just add O-E-I, something like that at the end of a word, and boom, spell arresto momentum. I'm going to stop the momentum here. So, very literal, very effective, very useful, very common, very hard. But the way Dumbledore cast it, I feel like, was so fun because I thought when I watched the first couple, I keep saying first, but when I watched The Prisoner of Azkaban for the first couple times, I was thinking that Dumbledore was pointing as oh no, look, Harry's falling. I should say some words. But now I'm kind of realizing that he was that was his makeshift wand, his finger. he wasn't trying. His wand was in his pocket. Just it took a whole millisecond to get out faster. So he had to just point his finger, just using his finger. So that was a very interesting question. Let's move on to question number maybe 14, 15. I'm not even keeping track anymore. How do you create natural fire? What is the incantation to creating a fire that is completely natural, that is not dark magic, but just fire? If you lit a match, that's exactly what you get. How do you do that? Well, it's the incantation that we're going for here, and I don't know if we have an incantation for this, because I know Hermione does cast fire on Snape's robes, but I don't know if that incantation was even audible, or if that was the same one, because Hermione made, fire in the jars, and I think that incantation was Lacarian Flammarion, not the one that we're thinking of now. So, what is the incantation for natural fire? It is shorter than the Bluebell Flames, but it is definitely a more tricky to figure out. So the answer is Incendio. Incendio is the incantation for the, fire that is natural, not dark at all. And I'm making it clear that it is not dark fire because in this next question right now, what is the dark magic fire called? So, this is the unnatural fire. It's dark magic. So, here's what the situation is. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are in the Room of Requirement battling Draco Malfoy, Vincent Crabbe, and Gregory Goyle. Goyle just goes crazy and starts casting so much of this unnatural dark fire, and it starts to devour the Room of Requirement. So, Harry, Ron, and Hermione find broomsticks, and they fly away, and it was Goyle that died. So Goyle falls into the fire and dies, but Crabbe and Malfoy are still okay. Harry grabs Malfoy, Ron grabs Crabbe, and they fly out of there. Ron kicks the dynamo into the fire. In my brain, this is probably the 5th take of this segment because I have said it so many times when I was talking about this fire. So Ron kicks the diadem into the fire, and it is destroyed. So the answer is Fiend Fire. Fiend Fire is what this unnatural dark magic fire is called. And oh boy, I'm so glad I got through this because I've said Fiend Fire way too much. But let's get a move on before I say Fiend Fire again. Okay, so now we're moving back to the first book / movie / story / section of reality. Okay, I'm just gonna get out of the cell. Okay, so what this question is what is the word to call a broom from the ground? I would definitely call this an incantation. It isn't a spell, but it is a word of power to make change happen. So, of course, change, very little, but it is change nonetheless. That is what I classify an incantation to be. So, whatever this is, let's just get on to this. So, what they say is up. Up, up, up. And I saw a really funny meme the other day. It was, so you know how Hermione goes, it's not Leviosa, it's Leviosa, but Harry goes, it's not up, it's up. That's funny. It was funny because that's Hermione. And then Hermione goes, you dare use my own tricks against me. It was funny. It was pretty funny. Actually, I'll go put it on the Potter Discussion Instagram. So you want to go see that meme for yourself? Really funny, really awesome. Go check that out. Okay, so up is the answer. Up is what a wizard or witch says when they want to call a broom from the ground, and it's pretty handy because you don't have to bend down. Oh, man, imagine bending down. That's just pretty difficult. So now let's move on. Question number 17. What is a hover charm? Hover charms seem to be more complicated than they need to be. What I think of when I hear hover charm is in the 7th book when Xenophilius, I always say I'm like Xenophilia, but Xenophilius uses a hover charm to move a big cabinet. That's what I always think of. And I always thought a hover charm was different from what they learned in the first book. But I realized it wasn't. A hover charm is just Wingardium Leviosa, swish and flick. And I was so surprised because I felt like that was more levitation, but this is a hover. And then I realized those are the same thing. Here's a little secret for you. Levitating and hovering is the same thing. So use that in your life, succeed, make millions of dollars. But my brain couldn't make that connection for a surprising amount of time. But when I finally did, I felt, oh wow, pretty simple spell. It's just swish and flick, Wingardium Leviosa. You're welcome, Hermione. Okay, question number 18. How did Umbridge get into the Room of Requirements in the 5th book? Umbridge blew down the door in the Room of Requirement using a spell that I felt like was delivered so well by the actor. The name has escaped me by this moment, but the actor who played Umbridge did such a fantastic job casting that spell. And she said, I will give you one more chance. Okay. And then just goes and boom, the spell. And I feel like Nigel, Colin Creevy, whatever he is, he resurfaced as Nigel, but he goes up to the hole, to the hole in the wall, and he sees Umbridge standing there with the High Inquisitorial Squad, and they're ready to go in. But especially, I feel like when it's shaking before, it's like, they're like 4 or 5 big booms, and then they can finally see out. And the spell she used was Bombarda Maxima. Bombarda Maxima! And that actually feeds in perfectly to this next spell. What is the lesser version of that spell? What is the lesser version of Bombarda Maxima? And you might say Bombarda Minima. Nope, it's just Bombarda. Bombarda Maxima is to create large explosions, but Bombarda is just to create not small explosions, but smaller explosions. Because, of course, there is really no such thing as a small explosion. If an explosion is an explosion, it's an explosion. I'll let you figure that out as we move on to the next question. And this is unfortunately our final question of the day. I can feel the tears coming, but I'll fight them back just to get through this. And I'm going to let you know right now. This one is hard. This one is very difficult. So, pause it, do whatever, but don't look it up. Don't you dare open your Google app. Don't you dare go to Safari. Because I can see you in spirit. I can't, but I will know. And I'll feel it in my heart if you look it up, and I'll be so sad. I can't, but don't. It makes it so much fun for them. But no more stalling. Let's do this. What does the incantation Talentalegra do? Okay. Think. I'll give you 2 hints. 1, we have talked about it on this episode. 2, it happened on the Dueling Club. In the Dueling Club, Malfoy casts the spell on Harry. He says, "Tell Aunt Allegra." And what does Harry start doing? I don't know. All right. Think. Pause it right now. Okay, you thought about it for a little bit. Okay, let's think. Let's think together. What is it? Okay, there's really no figuring out. This isn't a math problem. So let's just say it on the, together. 1, 2, 3. Dancing. If you didn't get that, I'm so sorry, but it causes your opponent to dance. That is the challenge question for today. If you want to submit your own challenge question, use those 2 links in the show notes below. Submit a voice submission using the SpeakPipe link, or just text using the Google form. If you have any questions, comments, or topics you would like to hear on the podcast, definitely send me an email. My email is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. That is thepotterdiscussion@gmail.com. Things are picking up over at the Potter Discussion Instagram. Search the Potter Discussion on your Instagram app. Go follow. It is a private account, so you can get access to the juiciest memes, the best quizzes, and updates on the episodes. Right now, I will personally accept your invitation and welcome you to the family. If you could just scroll down in your podcast app of choice, tap those 5 stars, or even leave a written review, that could help me out more than you could ever know, and it would help other listeners find the show. As always, use information to your advantage, and I will see you later.